The Nexus 5 is a very, very, very famous phone indeed. For many people who used it, it became a staple of Android phones, a yardstick by which we measure new phones, thanks to its combination of price, performance, and a stock Android experience. But it can't possibly hold up after 3 years in the smartphone world. Can it? I recently spent 3 days using this device, both for the sake of this review and because I needed a phone. So let's talk about it. On the outside, there's nothing remarkable about the Nexus 5, especially not mine, which, thanks to bad luck, had to be repaired twice and came back with a dent in the top and a back that's easy to take off despite the phone's intended non-removable back construction. So yeah, this one in particular doesn't exactly feel premium, and even in perfect shape it wouldn't either. But it was never meant to. This phone was introduced at just $349 US for the 16GB variant and $399 US for the 32GB variant, and it was a damn good phone, not just for the price, but in general. And with all that said, the build quality isn't terrible, it's just not going to feel like a modern Samsung or iPhone offering, both of which are, of course, hundreds of dollars more. The phone has a lock button, a volume rocker, and that's it for physical buttons. There's also no fingerprint scanner, which wasn't introduced in the Nexus lineup until the year after. But speaking of buttons, mine actually doesn't have the aforementioned lock button. Less than a year after getting the phone, it was hit with the now infamous boot loop issue. And when I say it's infamous, I'm not saying just in the Nexus 5, but pretty much all LG phones. My sister was at the time using the phone as her daily driver, and she replaced it with another Nexus 5, and because I was too lazy to go back and get it fixed even though it was in warranty, it never got fixed, and that was stupid of me. So it wasn't until the Note 7 started exploding that I started taking a serious look at the phone. After a little research, I found the boot loop issues were actually caused by the power button. So I opened up the phone and took it off. Right off the motherboard. After that, the phone didn't boot loop anymore. It was just hard to start up. You've got to hold the volume button down and plug it into the USB on a computer, and then it'll boot in recovery mode, after which you can use a command line command to get it rebooted normally. So installing Cyanogenmod without a power button was a huge pain, because you actually need to use the power button to confirm options in the recovery menu. So I actually took 2 wires and stuck them right to the motherboard whenever I needed to use the power button. That sucked. But Cyanogenmod 14.1, which is based on Android 7.1, kind of breathes new life into this phone in a big way. This is partially because Android 7.1 runs great on this phone and is just a really great operating system, but also because in Cyanogenmod there are options to use the volume buttons to wake the phone when it's locked, and there's another option to double tap the status bar to lock it again. With those, I was able to use the phone with no trouble at all. Sure, it was a pain if I needed to restart the phone. There's no real way to do it without opening it up and unplugging the battery, but I was able to use it again, and really without any problems. In fact, double tapping the status bar is a really convenient way to lock the phone, as my finger is... In fact, double tapping the status bar is actually a really convenient way to lock the phone. My finger's already over the screen, so I just move it up a little bit and tap instead of moving it off the screen to hit the lock button. So yeah, the phone doesn't have a power button, but it actually still works great. Moving on, we've got a 1080p screen, which at 4.95 inches provides 445 pixels per inch. It doesn't have remarkable colors, but because of that resolution, it is still really crisp, and to most people, it's going to look great. On the back, we've got an 8 megapixel camera, and on the front, a 1.3 megapixel camera, which are both definitely showing their age, and actually weren't really considered very good even when the phone launched 3 years ago, but are definitely still usable in good lighting conditions, and like I said, the phone was $350. It's worth noting there is a pretty big camera bump, but I really don't mind. Although maybe they should have filled that out with a bigger battery, because the 2300 milliamp hour battery in this phone doesn't last very well. Now keep in mind, this particular phone sat in my drawer for 2 years and is 3 years old in total, so it's gonna be worse than it was at the time of manufacturing. But I remember using the phone as a daily driver, and the battery life was never very good. Oh, and while we're on internals, there's 2 gigabytes of RAM, a Snapdragon 800, and no SD card slot. So if 16 or 32 gigabytes doesn't work for you, neither will this phone. And on another note, kind of randomly, this phone has AC Wi-Fi, which even this year's Moto Z Play doesn't have. So that's awesome. Good job, LG. Even if you can't make your phones not boot loop. Now let's talk performance. Keep in mind that my last 2 phones were a Samsung Galaxy Note 7 and an iPhone 7. So when I say fast, I mean fast. And when I say slow, it actually might not be too bad, depending on your perspective. So I'm happy to say that performance is actually still great a lot of the time. The OS itself actually pretty much flies and doesn't feel slow at all, whether you're on the home screen or managing notifications. If you've got a lot of them, it can slow down a little, but it's not bad. And the whole experience is made better by Android 7.1's great notifications. And they nailed that. The phone even handles some modern games like Hill Climb Racing 2 with no lag whatsoever. The times where the phone felt slow were usually when using heavier apps like Facebook and Facebook Messenger. I suspect the RAM is the main culprit here, but in general the multitasking experience isn't great, and I definitely felt my share of times where the keyboard got really laggy. Particularly one bad thing was if I was flipping back and forth between Hill Climb Racing and Facebook, it got pretty slow during those times. But again, it was a mid-range phone with a mid-range price at launch 3 years ago, and the fact that any part of this experience is still fast is really impressive. So I'm not sure how much more there is to say, actually. For me, coming from flagship phones, there was a performance hit. And when I had a hardware issue that caused poor reliability when texting, and I also had a weird bug one time that wouldn't let me unlock the phone, it just wouldn't take my pattern anymore. I had to use a command line tool to remove the lock, open the phone, unplug the battery, and restart it. So after all that, I wasn't upset when I had to switch back to my iPhone 7 after only 3 days or so. But it still doesn't mean it was a terrible experience. It was pretty good. And for anyone looking for something more mid-range, or particularly if you're on a budget, or you're used to a slowdown or two, or you just don't care that much and you need a phone, this is a surprisingly good choice. My sister is still using hers with no problems whatsoever, and we haven't even upgraded it to Cyanogenmod for Android 7.1. The phone holds up shockingly well, and I have no problem saying that a lot of people are still going to have no problem using this phone. So that's it, guys. If you like this video, please give me a like. Comment your thoughts. Are you still rocking an OG Nexus 5? Let me know. Subscribe if you loved the video and hit that bell to get a notification whenever I post. Check me out on Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter, and check out one of my other videos here. And I'll catch you in the next one.